Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm here today with Mr. Grayham Forscutt, and we have a very interesting message for you all, so please pay attention and tune in. Welcome, Grayham. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi from Golden Bay, New Zealand. We're right at the shortest days, so it's getting cold.
Mhm.
Welcome, everybody.
Yes. So, Graham, I think we have a lot of different parts of the message today that we're going to be going over. We're going to talk about the solstice. We're going to talk about Golden Bay, where you guys live in this sort of 5D city that's kind of come together organically. We're going to talk about education of children. We're going to talk about the 12 categories for the new earth. So please go ahead and start us wherever you like. Thank you so much.
Okay. I live in New Zealand in Golden Bay. It's one of the regions, and there's about 5,000 people that live where I live. We're kind of cut off from the rest of New Zealand. There's an hour-long drive over a pretty tall mountain, and to get in to where I live, there's a little bit of effort involved. People just don't do it for a weekend, kind of out and about for a Sunday afternoon. But since around about the 1970s, the hippie era, and many people have gravitated towards this region, partly because of the shape of the land and so on, and the nature here, and many things are possible here. So there's out of the 5,000, or probably less, you've got the children and that, but out of the voting population, 25% of the voters here vote for the Green Party, or the party that is more involved with things that we're interested in. So over the decades, what's happened here is that healers have arrived, artists have arrived, many people in different areas that are interested in all the new things that we can do to create the new reality. They've gravitated here. People visit and they want to stay. They go home and they get their moving sort of credentials, and they head over and they move here. So we've got many people here that are interested in all the different, or many of the new different aspects that you would identify as a fifth dimensional community. No one's going around saying, you do this, I'm this, or so on. It's self-organizing in the true sense of the fifth dimension, where those that are known or noted for their skills, well, they are seen as the representative of that aspect of the overall community. So it's not like there's somebody setting up a government. And of course, there is the 3D council here. They're doing whatever they're doing. And they are pretty well integrated with the alternative people. I mean, there's so many children here from that go to the schools and so on. So it's pretty well integrated. But everybody knows, if you want to know where to get your organic seeds, well, you go to this person or that community organic gardens. If you need to go to an osteopath, well, you know who that is. So everybody sort of really understands that we're all creating this new reality without anybody kind of officially standing up to claim anything that they are this or they are that. In fact, if people come along and claim that they are now, channeling the somebody or some group, they more or less they don't survive here. They just end up leaving because people are not interested in having that kind of approach, because it sort of creates a mini hierarchy within the alternative sector. So we're already well past that level as far as the group dynamics is concerned here. So I've got a few images to show that we could run through and show what's happening with the astrology. This is probably the most important couple of days of the year, every year, and also during this year, there's a number of challenging aspects taking place. The last few days, the last days or so, and the next couple of days, pretty challenging. We can see it in the world today. So we'll have a look at that, and then we will have a look at a few examples of what's taking place, or what can take place in the education side of it with children. And then we'll kind of have a look also at some of these different aspects of the 144 community, fifth dimensional dynamic community I'll call it structure, even though it's not really a structure, but it is sort of it's based on the what we'd call the oversoul. So we'll have a look at that side of it as well.
Wow. Very cool. Very cool. So you're saying like these few days are very important. That's probably why everything in the planet is feeling intensified, like in Iran and Middle East and America, like everything is kind of intensifying because like you said, we're in a challenging aspect planetary wise right now. And we also have the solstice this Saturday, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
We have the solstice, and that's this solstice is each year for the last 50, 80 years, and for the next couple of hundred years. This is the most important solstice for like 26,000 years. So also, but this year, we have these challenging aspects amongst some of the planets. So that's causing the turmoil that we see out in the world today.
Wow. Wonderful. Well, thank you for giving us some understanding. And let's look at the images I think you wanted to show us about it, right? Like the planetary alignments of what's actually happening in the sky, causing this tension.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure. I'll open up this PDF.
perfect. Thank you.
So tell me how that looks as far as size goes and so on, and
Yeah, I was
uh, make it a bit bigger or
just a little bit bigger, I think would be perfect. Just yeah, they
a
were yeah,
little
just
bit
a
bigger.
little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. Just from this
Okay.
zoom button right there. Yeah, it's more like a little bit. Perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. Mm-hmm.
And some of the other images I think are even a bit smaller. So yell out if that's looking a bit small. So what we have here is the astrology for this is called the sidereal zodiac. So not that that side of it is important at this stage, but here we see the Earth, the circle here with the cross above it, 2 degrees. This is probably today and tomorrow. This is the chart. And so the Earth's there, 2.5 degrees of sidereal Sagittarius. And here's the galactic center. That's out in this direction up here, 12 o'clock-ish. So we've had during the last couple of days the Earth getting between the sun. The sun's in the middle here. Sorry, I haven't put it in here, but the sun's in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And if you wanted to teleport to the sun, the heart of our solar system, and look at the galactic center, which is out in this direction, then only on the last couple of days and the next couple of days will the Earth be between our sun and the galactic center. So the galactic center is always in communication with the stars and the suns and so on. So the Earth is cutting through or crossing over that cable. We could call it like a telephone cable or something like that. So it's sort of it's the time of year where we receive a direct interaction with the galactic center there. We're going to have a look at that, what that means in a moment or two. But importantly, it's about to arrive at the solstice. So we've got an image which is coming up next. We'll go into that in a second here. But these red lines on this chart here between where the Earth is and some of these planets, and there's one down here as well, in astrology, that's called a grand cross, meaning it creates a square, 90 degrees, 90 degrees, 90 degrees, 90 degrees. In astrology, this is the most challenging aspect you can have between planets. So let's have a look at the planets involved. So we've got the Earth up here. Over here at this 9 o'clock-ish here, we have a couple of symbols here. One is Saturn and the other one is Neptune. So that square between Saturn and the Earth, well, that took place about 3 days ago. So think what was happening, on the planet there, on the planet three days ago, even 4 days ago, in the sense that it was just about there. So we had what was taking place in Los Angeles and California with the ice and so on. We had the um, what's been going on with Israel and Iran and then the political aspects around that, in the US there, what's going to take place and evolve on from that. Well, that is Saturn, which is past life karma. Saturn is structures and systems, and the square aspect is unsustainable in the sense that in a building, you have to put a bracing. You don't just have square 90-degree angles. You more or less have to put a brace to hold things up. So when you have the square aspect, karma is arriving in your face, so collective karma, and also personal karma as well, but also the kind of systems and structures, which is Saturn, they're under stress at the moment. So that's that side of it. Over the opposite here, we've got a couple of symbols here. This one's moved a little bit further on, but here we have Mercury, fastest moving planet. So right now, in the next day or two, Mercury's all about communication. So now we've got the communication with a challenging aspect to the Earth, communication with a challenging aspect to systems and structures and organizations and governments and so on and so on. So this is vital. We see it happening in the world today. What is the communication? What is happening in the dialogue between systems, structures, organizations, and government, and so on? So this is why things are taking place. Down here at 6 o'clock, we've got Jupiter here as well. So Jupiter represents things that are over the top, exaggerated, things that are beyond what is realistic, things like this. And then in a couple of days, the square aspect between the Earth forms a perfect square there to Neptune. Neptune's the crown chakra, but also Neptune is what is fanciful, what is unrealistic, what is not real, not as what is not based on reality. It's not going to be long not going to be long away when Saturn catches Neptune. Saturn's the most practical planet in the solar system out of all in astrology, and it's catching the most unrealistic Neptune there. So what's taking place now on the planet and during this one here will be a couple of months at least. So what's happening now in these next few months is that systems, structures, organizations, governments, and so on, their exaggeratedness and over the topness and what is not sustainable, that's Jupiter there, and then it will probably climax in a few months when Saturn comes along and catches Neptune, and what's built on fantasy and false ideas and false concepts and so on. So that'll all come to a head. Now, between now and then, in the sense of the metaphysics of the heart and metaphysics of compassion and empathy and so on, well, that creates a certain waveform. This is what we're all involved in. And that waveform is, there's a famous saying, when we have our heart active, our auric field radiates away from us and expands and expands and expands. Whereas if we have a contracted heart, or things that we're doing are not based on truth, not based on compassion and empathy, well, that's contraction. That diminishes. So as one area of humanity, one group, fifth dimensional group, as we're expanding and growing and developing, the other side of the storyline is collapsing in on itself. So this is taking place. We're right in the middle of it right now.
So it's kind of like as things are collapsing and we're seeing all this pain, sort of, there's also this new kind of getting created, is what you're saying. So people kind of can be aware of both realities in a sense.
Yes, and another way of seeing that is that the negative, not only as it's collapsing, it's like tightening a knot. So it's grinding itself to a halt. It's like that. Whereas the expansion, as it's expanding, it expands ever more faster and broader. So they're not going at the same speed. One's collapsing and grinding its potential to a halt. It's grinding it to a halt. Its its potential is getting less and less, slower and slower to manifest. The other side of it, the fifth dimensional side of it, is opening and broadening ever more quickly, ever more broadly. So those two things are happening at the same time.
Mhm. And you were saying something about the heart chakra. So like, are you saying like people like us, like all of us on the planet that are like the light workers, our heart chakra is going to be expanding to kind of feel that expansion as well? Like, is that going to be something that we might sense, or what do you think about
Oh,
that?
I can give you a simple example, like what's happening in Iran and so on now. So people just instantly, automatically, without even thinking about it, they have compassion and empathy for what's going on there. They just do. And that's an expansion. That's a coherent waveform around the planet. So a negative thing is happening, and all those that have a level of empathy and compassion, they join forces in the sense that they have this heart expansion and empathy, and that creates a waveform. And that waveform is incredibly strong and it's incredibly broad.
I love that. So it's kind of like as the darkness is occurring and there's all this pain, as we have compassion for them, we can almost radiate that energy to those war zones and the areas where people are suffering, right? In California, different parts of the world, there's kind of suffering happening all over Palestine and everything. But you're saying as we see that, our heart will sort of connect and we can send compassion, which I love. So.
Uh, yeah, and it's not even, in a sense, it's not even about having to send compassion, because as soon as we feel, that is sending compassion. So we don't have to do much in that sense as we feel. So we feel the pain of the Iranian people. We feel the pain of the people that are getting arrested in Los Angeles and so on. We feel that pain. Well, that's it. As we're feeling that pain, our auric field is radiating empathy and compassion and creating a waveform as a byproduct around the earth, a sustainable one.
Oh, wow, I love that. I love that. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know whether we'll get into this. Maybe we'll just leave this part because we are diving into the metaphysics here of stargates and portals. So I think at this point,
Well, this is just
we'll
like in terms of the solstice, it says Earth June 18th through 22nd. So it's kind of like from
yeah.
yesterday to Sunday, something like this is happening. Do you want to just shortly talk about it? Just we don't have to go into everything, but something that you feel is important for people to know about the solstice, if you could please share.
Okay. So the solstice, that's a Earth-based event, for people on Earth. But it just so happens that this solstice and for the last few years, few decades, and for the next few decades. So it just so happens that the solstice, a purely Earth-based event, other planets in the solar system, they're not having a solstice, on June 18th. So what is out there in the direction of the Earth, looking from the sun, on June 21st, 22nd, is that is where the solar system's equator, it's called the ecliptic. So the solar system itself has an equator. That's the common orbital uh, location where the planets are orbiting around the sun. So that's called the solar system's equator. And the Milky Way galaxy has its own equator, the common equator where the majority of stars are, and where the galactic equator and the solar equator, where they cross, where they meet, because they're not exactly lined up, they meet and cross over each other. And that's out in the direction, and we, on the Earth here, we cross that equator, or say the Earth does, on June 21st, 22nd. Of course, other planets in the solar system, they all cross that equator as well. And when they cross that equator, if the population, on the moons of Jupiter and so on, if they're crossing the equator on their day between the sun and the galactic center, well, those more advanced six-dimensional groups and so on, well, that's when they'll be expecting to receive information and connecting to the galactic center, the galactic administration. So this gives us also an opportunity here on Earth during these few days here to make a connection to the galactic center or the galactic administration. Or another way of saying that is our future self. What they call the oversoul, which we'll have a look at in a moment here. So our oversoul, the future self, all time are here present. That really means fractal. So we can there also expect and receive and connect to in our own unique, meditative way and so on, to connect to our future self. So that's always potential. And this is the best couple of days of the year to do that each year.
I love that. So the galactic center, the great central sun, is directly in a line with the earth from like yesterday till Sunday. So people could meditate, set the intention to go travel to the great central sun and connect with their own future self, the oversoul, which we
Yeah.
all are to. And you're saying like it's the best time because it's like the distance is sort of in a straight line. So instead of having to like go different ways. You can just directly go right there and maybe get
Yeah, yeah,
might get messages about what to do next or what's happening for the world. Like people might get different healings, whatever they need, right? Like different things will happen based on their
yeah,
needs.
exactly. Pay attention to your dreams, pay attention to your intuition and so on, and life experience, and things might pop up in your life that point you to your next, your next level of integration and your next potential area that you might help or serve or, be of use to other people in the collective, etc.
Yeah, so this next few days are like the most important days of the year. And so but it's important that people don't just do their regular meditation. They set an intention to connect to the great central sun and the galactic over there, right? So then they'll actually get the actual clear message. So I love this. You just pulled up. This is one of the things that gives me like hope. I remember the first time I saw this when you sent it to me, I was like, oh my God, like this is it. This is the blueprint for the earth that would solve almost everything, right? Like I'm sure people you like you said before, people can add more categories to it if they see, but this kind of covers all the issues the earth has and solutions for it from my perspective. So could you share with us a little?
Yeah, sure, sure. This is something I've been working on for maybe 25 years or something like that. And bit by bit, because I understood the golden ratio or the geometry of coherence, of interaction, of unity, and all these different terms that you'd want, the wholeness, oneness, etc., etc. It has a certain geometric form to it. And this is a fold up here. You could cut this out, these pentagons here, and you fold it up, and it forms what they call a dodecahedron. And a dodecahedron has 12 pentagonal faces, and in the ancient cultures they called it the form of the ether. That is everywhere, all present. Different words like that. The plasma, the 97 or something percent of the reality is this plasma. So what we've done here is bit by bit over the last few decades, we've gathered information from different sources. Some of it's a little bit of intuition, and we've divided the community into the 12-fold sectors, something like King Arthur was doing there. And so we've got a name there, we've got the environment, we've got health, we've got global coherence, we've got education, public services, so on and so on. And then over time, I've subdivided each of those 12 into 12 more refined aspects within each one. And so I've sent this around the planet, and many people have sort of are beginning to use it, communities and so on. Some people they look at it and they say, yeah, I'd rather just had changed that bit there. So they white it out, with a whiting pen, and then they write in their own version of it and they send that back to me, and then I include that in some cases. So it's an ongoing developing process. It's not a fixed thing that says, well, this is it and that's it. So I call it a self-organizing yet dynamic social structure, a fifth dimensional social structure.
Mhm.
So there's areas in here which includes what we often get together and talk about up here. We've got the galactic community, so there's starseed, there's exosciences and galactic history and so on and so on. And then there's science and technologies, the new sciences that are coming out, etc., etc., spiritual topics, culture and arts and so on. So many people are actively involved in many of these activities. So they're not necessarily talking about the fifth dimension. They might not know anything about the word, the fifth dimension, or star seeds or anything like that. But they're actively involved in trying to create a better reality, a better world for everybody to live on. So in the sense they don't have to know that they're working towards the fifth dimension. Those phrases might not mean anything to them. So that's a useful thing to realize, is that when we talk about the fifth dimension or the 144 and all these terms, it really does make the group small. When we realize that all that a person needs to be doing is working in an area which is for the betterment of others, the broadening, the more respect for nature, the broadening of potentials and possible potential creativity and so on. So that is it. That's all that person needs to be doing. So when we realize that, all of a sudden, the expansion, the number of people that are actually involved in recreating reality expands enormously. And we know these people, the person that's in the hospice shop. Now, I don't know what they call it over in your part of the world, but here, second-hand clothes shops and recycle shops, they're called hospice shops. And you go into one of those shops, and it's often women that are working in there. Well, there they are. That is part of the new. They're there, often voluntarily, and they're selling, they're getting clothes and garments and things, ready for people who can't afford them. So that is a simple example of a person who's in their heart. They're doing things based on their level of awareness, and they're outputting that heartfelt energy, which expands and expands, goes around the planet, all those words about when they talk about the heart consciousness, etc., etc. So it's very broad in that sense.
I love that because, yeah, you're right. Like, there's people, for example, working to better education, let's say all over the world, but they don't even know they're a star seed, but they're still thinking like maybe children learn better this way, right? Or people are working in like creating new integrative hospitals, and some of the doctors might not know why they're thinking of mixing East and West, right? So I like what you're saying. You're saying this is already naturally getting created all around the earth. It's not something like we have to push forward, but each of us can kind of look at it and say, okay, what part of this do I fit in? What is my mission? What is my role? And then kind of do it, right? So for people that don't know what to do, they can look at this and probably get ideas. And for all of us,
Yeah,
right, like we get new ideas all the time. All of us are always growing.
and it helps to identify others. Like there's one here, housing the homeless,
Can we
things
go
like that.
a little bit larger? Is that okay, Graham? Let's kind of like zoom in on each of them as we talk about it, because I think you've created so many important categories. So I think let's kind of like,
We'll just go and have a look at these three. So there's a few here.
yeah.
Peacekeeping forces, water supply, making sure the water supply to houses and people, you know, these things, waste management, they're just simple things, but they are vital. They're part of uh, people want to get involved in these things. Emergency services, helping people that have broken a leg up in the mountains climbing or things like that. So support for the vulnerable. So these things are fifth dimensional actions and activities. So it doesn't have to be uh, labeled spiritual or it has a label on it like that.
Yeah.
But then we can have more of that topic over here. We've got those that are interacting with the non-physical realms. This one here, this what we're doing here today, holistic living models. So this
That's
could be part of that.
right. That's the community, like how to live holistically, like you said, no hierarchy, kind of like King Arthur, round table, but still have a village that's naturally formed, everybody doing what they're good at. Nobody is like the mayor or the king or anything like that. But somehow it's working. So holistic living models. And that can happen all over the earth, right? Like as things are being destroyed, people can then start building these things.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes it's by, they're triggered into doing it because of what's happening in the 3D world. So, not quite forced into doing it, but they're triggered, they're activated, and they just say, well, we need to do this. We need to form this group. We need to, anti-whaling, anti-pollution groups, and all these people doing all these things. Um, it's just part of it. The arts and so on. Here, this one here's the arts, and
Which
and then there's you got
that
people.
one in the bottom or the community culture one? Hold on, let me just move this so people can see it. Okay, there we go, right here. The culture community, right? Okay, perfect.
Yeah. So that's broad, there's the arts, then there's the venue. Where would you do the arts? Then that's like on an earth ley line. And then you have all the people that create the colours and the art decor. Then you have all the people that create better sound systems, better musical instruments to get more precise tones and all these things. So um, they're just all kind of merging in together. They're not claiming to be anything special. They're just out there doing this for the in some cases it's for beauty alone. is activating people, and they want to pursue ever more subtlety and refinement in beauty itself. So they can be motivated for, by various things.
I love that. And
Over
that
here we've got,
good energy to the earth, right? Like when people are doing art, let's say there are dark times, but musicians like singing helps keep people calm, for example. So all these are very high vibrational activities too to kind of help what's happening in the world, right? Like the arts and
yeah,
creating.
absolutely.
And even
Most music is,
I like that, the ancient sites part. Like people can be gathering right now on ancient sites and just kind of like, sending good vibes. So, and you said it happens automatically when we think about it, like coming back to all your other lectures where you talk about the distance being instantaneous, right? Like communication in the field. So people just going to ancient sites right now, if they could even be just sending good energies automatically.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we've done this in previous ones. We've chatted about the metaphysics of how the heart generates cascades of ever increasingly, speed-wise, harmonics based on the golden ratio. And our heart generates golden ratio harmonics when we're feeling compassion and empathy, when we're meditating. Our brainwave states golden ratio. And at the level of physics there, where we go from slower than light speed into faster than light speed, well, there's the evidence out there, although we're not going to bring that at this moment because we've done that previously, that to get from slower to faster than light speed, well, that is based around the golden ratio harmonics. So when we're feeling, I'm not saying thinking, I'm saying feeling. When we are feeling compassion and empathy, it's a spontaneous thing. So as we are feeling empathy and compassion, at that same moment, our heart is generating and going through and faster than the speed of light, the the waveforms of compassion and empathy. And that then links with all the other waveforms of compassion and empathy around the planet. And that creates, generally what we'd call a field, an auric field around the earth of compassion and empathy. So it's not that we have to stop and think about it. It's already happened as we feel empathy and compassion.
I love that. So empowering to think about and feel. I feel it when you talk about it. Like I feel the whole wave start to connect right away. And I think that's probably the good thing about social media. It's kind of like everybody's seeing what's happening around the world and everybody's feeling compassion. So as the darkness is happening, we're all also adding that heart energy naturally, just by knowing it's happening.
I think that's the beauty of social media. Yeah, that's right.
Sometimes
Yeah.
like spiritual people, I've heard them say like, don't watch low vibrational thing. It's going to lower your vibration. But what you're saying is the opposite. And I love that, which is when you see something that's sad or dark, immediately feeling empathy for it changes, it's changing it. So it's not actually lowering our vibration. It's actually heightening everything's vibration. So that's very different than the common teachings, right? People say,
Well, well, I would say that people that are just awakening, just waking up, it may be useful then not to look at too much negativity that's going on around the planet because they haven't yet often stabilized their auric field. They haven't stabilized themselves well enough so that they might get influenced and feel like, there's no way out, sort of thing. So there may be a period of valuable, time not to get too involved in what's going on in the world. But as soon as you're sustainably grounded in the fifth dimensional way of being and living, then you can look at world events and you can then also play that role of having that level of empathy and compassion for what's going on. So there is probably a period there where people might not want to do that.
I see what you're saying. So it depends on like where you're at in your consciousness. And if it affects you in a negative way, don't do it. But if you're able to maintain like and then take breaks, like for me, sometimes I have to take breaks, meditate, come back, when I see some stuff from Iran, it's been yeah. So okay, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then
So shall we move ahead and have a look the next what we've got here, just to bring it into context with why we've chosen this 144 as kind of like a model or a template. Oh, I have to make
Oh
it a
yeah,
bit smaller.
a little smaller. So
Yeah, yeah.
to see that structure. Okay.
So here we have here. So over this side, we've got, this is a photograph of a model I built out of cardboard, different colored cardboard. So we have the silvery one here, we have the pink one, a dark pink one, a purple one there. And it has diamond faces, golden ratio diamond faces. This is what they call the diamond body, the diamond light body, the diamond ray codes, different things like that. So this silver one here, it's a certain size. Inside it, there's a small pink one, a small green one. So there's 12 smaller ones of the same shape using the same diamonds, but they're a golden ratio smaller in size. So 12 fit inside that one, 12 fit inside that one. We can look in there and see them. 12 fit inside there, 12 fit inside there. So there's 12 of this larger size, and then there's 12 smaller ones inside each. That's 144. Then this outside here, this purple, I've only got half of it here. And it's like an eggshell broken half. So this is also made out of the golden ratio diamonds, and the 144 fit inside this larger one. There's a heart shaped here, this yellow shape. In the center of each of these, there's a smaller version of this one. And eventually 12 of these large purple ones would fit around a much larger central sort of geometric shape here. So this 12 around one is an archetype, or it's not only an archetype, it is how reality organizes itself to form clusters and groups in the most economic, ergonomic way that's possible. This is how universe brings together 12 and self-organizes into a group. Then those 12 can self-organize into a larger group, which is 144. So over here, we've got some alphanumerics. This is simple. Anyone can do this and get exactly the same results as I've got here. So we've got A1, English alphabet, Z26. So this shows how potentially powerful the English alphabet is as a light language. So A1, Z26, we can just add these phrases up here. So we've got 222. When we add each of these phrases here, using the total G7, A1, L, 12, 1, etc. The grand total of this overseeing the galaxy, 222. Galactic administration, 222. The real Galactic Federation, 222. On it goes. Group psychology, 222. Down here, advanced civilizations, 222. At the coordination hub, 222. Meetings of parliament, 222. 12 departments, 222. Whoops, I've doubled up. Group psychology, 222. The nuclear component, whole systems design, integrated overview, avatar synthesis. So what we're seeing here is that at the galactic center there, overseeing the galaxy, the Galactic Administration, the true Galactic Federation. Now, there's a lot of claims out there about the Galactic Federation, this, the Galactic Federation, and some of them are, bogus. So when we look at the true Galactic Administration, their way of organizing themselves is based around this same 12 around 1 model. This is what they call the avatar synthesis, integrated overview, whole system design, etc., etc. So that's that side of it. Over here, using the same A1Z26, there's a whole group of phrases here which come to a different number, and that's 183. So we've got the Aquarian archetype, holistic vision, new earth hologram, light-based society, future education, whole systems, a model community, the prototype. So these can be just anything, holistic vision, the prototype, not necessarily focused on any particular thing. But when we get down here a couple more, we have the 12 rays. In the system of spirituality, you've got the 7 rays, and then from about 1980 onwards, 5 more rays were added. That's to include all the different aspects of the wholeness, the oneness. Interactiveness, the central group, planning councils, agents of society, mature social body, the 12 rays. You could just say 12 rays and then go and mention each one of these after it, new communities, etc., etc. So this is showing that this is what is meant by fractality. King Arthur knew about it. Jesus was trying to talk about it. If we organize our community based around this, what it's saying here, then we're fractally engaged and repeating what the galactic ultra-terrestrials, not extraterrestrials, ultra-terrestrials, what they do and how they're organizing themselves. So we're then at the fifth dimensional level, we're embedding in this fractal, which is then interacting with the higher dimensional fractals, and they see it's coming. They know that when this is unfolding in the same way that they've done things, they know then, oh, here they are, here's humanity, it's getting itself ready, it's organizing itself into the same fractal patterns that the higher realms are using. There's just one more here on this topic. This is the same model here, 144. It's called a tricontohedron. Now that's just the math name for the structure there, the shape there. In the New Age, they call it the light diamond body or the diamond ray codes. So in the spiritual teachings, this goes back in the last 30, 40 years or so, different advanced, I'll call them ultra-terrestrials. They're not really ETs, they're more involved than that. The local ultra-terrestrials that have been helping the planet Earth here, they have talked about, and people have received information, I've written it down in books and so on, that what they call the oversoul has 144 members, souls, within that oversoul. So a soul group has 144 members that then form that soul group. And this is their drawing, a two-dimensional kind of drawing of that, what that represents. But when we look at it in the real world, we can get cardboard and make it, then this is what it is. These 144 smaller units are packed around this one here. Of course, soul groups get together, forming clusters of soul groups. So as we mentioned back here, this larger purple one here, so a soul group can join with other soul groups, and then they go on to become the galactic, administration, the galactic center, and so on. So we're aligning, we're drawn up a template for the new community, 5D community, based on the fractal geometry, the reality of our oversoul, soul groups, the galactic administration, and we're using that as a kind of model or a template to build and self-organize in a way the new communities.
Wow. So the new communities
Uh,
aligning to the galactic vision is sort of how it's going to all get created, right? And I would also like to add, like, I want people to comment and write ideas for new community, like where you want to build it. Maybe this will be a way that people can kind of gather and find each other around the earth till we kind of like, set up more better systems maybe. But it's kind of like we all are going to synchronistically get connected, right? Like maybe they're watching this video, they'll have an idea for a community and then like they live near each other, they'll build it or something like that, right?
yeah, I think it can happen in numerous ways. I think the term self-organizing is important because when things cool down, when physics cools things down to what they call close to absolute zero, as things are cooling down there, the structures at that minute level that they're looking at, observing, they self-organize into this kind of geometry and these geometries where they form a cluster, and no longer each single unit is separate. It forms the cluster, and the cluster becomes the unit then, not the individual units. So in the sense that when people become chilled out, stay cool, chill out, man, things like that. When people become more chilled out in the way that they live their life, well, then they self-organizing with other similar people. And that self-organizing coming together through whether it's creative arts or wanting to support nature, etc., etc. So that self-organization is the key element which brings together groups of people, not only on a piece of land, but globally via social network or creative ventures via Zoom meetings and so on.
Mm, very cool.
So this one a little bit different, but it's sort of expanding on the theme, and then I think the rest of them are just more about education and having a look at a few things like that. So here, this one here is some images there. I've kind of just collared some of these together, so they're not my own personal images. So down here, oh, up here, this comes from NASA.
Mhm.
So to NASA, a lot of what's going on is unknown to them. They call it dark matter or dark energy and so on. They got their ideas and concepts around that. But if we want to turn that into actual metaphysics, then what we were talking earlier about some of these geometries, there's that basic one there. All these ones here I built out of cardboard. I used to take these to festivals. And at the festivals, it was noticeable. We were talking about this just before we clicked on the record button. So I'd have all these models that are displayed. This is only a few of them, and they would just cover a whole big area. And we were saying earlier about how when people walk past our stall, our stand, we weren't trying to sell anything. We were just trying to show people. And 95% of the people that stopped and were interested in our stall and these models and were looking at them and so on were children or people under 20, say people under 25. 95% of the alternative people, this is people that were there, they were going to healing stalls and stands and organic food stands and so on. 95 of the adults walked straight past our stall as if it wasn't even there. So that was really interesting for us. A friend of mine and I were putting this on. So what we're really trying to do here is trying to set in motion a template, this 144 image here for self-organizing community. And that is then, we've got three, this is off the internet somewhere, 2D, 3D, 4D, and we've got a person there kind of living a very sustainable organic lifestyle, tuned into earth, tuned into nature, doing meditations, and they're kind of living in some people might call it the silicon body. It's kind of like it's still a human form. It's on the borderline of being non-physical because I've had an organic lifestyle for decades. That's where the fifth dimension is, which is also called the fourth density. But then to go to the next dimension, what they call the fifth density or the sixth dimension, well, that's becoming a full non-physical lifestyle.
Mhm.
So collectively, to self-organize in the next level, the fifth dimension, to self-organize as a collective into the fifth dimension is also building us or creating or taking us towards the next level where we become a soul or an individual which doesn't need a physical body. So we've moved even beyond the fifth dimension. So what we're doing in modeling and trying to create this kind of idea here, this concept, that is not only just how the fifth dimension works, but it's part and parcel of what takes us to the next step, the sixth dimension.
So that's like when we leave the earth, like when we die, or you're saying while we're here, we can already be in the fifth and sixth dimension bodies, sort of thing.
And well, I'll give you an example. If people have heard of the local Earth ascended adepts, someone like Babaji, if people have heard of Babaji, there's others, there's Katumi and a few others. So they no longer require a physical body. They may keep their physical body, um, they may live in it, they may keep it going for hundreds of years, but they don't need it to survive. Their consciousness is already developed enough that they can sustain their own auric field, their own light body, even if they're not in a physical body. So they can then group together as a non-physical group. So that's what I mean by the beyond the fifth dimension, going into the sixth dimension, you become a conscious member and are on the border of self-dematerialization and become an active and actively involved in that group. And they are loosely called ultra-terrestrials because they don't need to walk around on the planet of a planetary surface. They don't need to eat food and so on. They just embody or embrace the light or the photonic realm in their light body. And this is also the Earth here. So So there's the Earth.
Mhm.
So here's the Earth.
Yeah, yes. Mhm.
And this could be this is the Earth light body or the Earth's DNA molecule, different names for it. The Earth ley line, grid work, etc., etc. And the red lines here form the diamonds, the same diamonds that we were talking about before of the oversoul. So the Gaia, the Earth it's a more advanced cluster of souls, an oversoul, maybe even a group of oversouls, which has created the Earth. And the appearance, the shape of it, you only need to go to these sacred sites and it's certainly there. Those the evidence for that. And in science, they call this shape that we were talking about earlier, that here it is here. In science, there's these diamonds again. Now, this looks like a flat surface, but actually it's spherical, and the dotted lines are on the far side. So it's actually a spherical shape here with the same in diamond, golden ratio diamond patterns. And in physics, they call that a photonic crystal. That's a light crystal. And you get people in the New Age talking about your light body, your diamond light body. Well, this is it. This is, in physics, a light crystal. So some of these things are just useful to know in the sense that what we're doing with that original 144 template for new community, we're designing the pattern of the new community, or we're presenting that as a possibility. And it's based on the same shape as science calls a light crystal. So some of these crossovers or connections between terms in the spiritual New Age community actually can be brought together with the other side of the brain, the physics and maths and geometry and so on. Uh, so I was moving ahead here. I think I'm going to just move past that one for now. So here's our global community. So we're just kind of this is just a picture. It's bringing together all the different cultures of the earth and having respect for different ethnic groups and what they're doing and the way they live their lives and accepting and all these simple words that we see out there. And just it seems simple. We take it for granted, probably most of us, that yeah, we have respect for different nationalities and the way they do things and the way they dress differently. And world music's been around for 40 or 50 years. So this is sort of what we're kind of focused on here. What we're talking about is the global culture. And then I think I'm just going to pass by that one. Okay, we're going to have a look at Lisa Simpson.
Oh, good.
So,
Love her hair.
yeah. So, uh, now, here's the dodecahedron.
Mhm.
Here's Lisa Simpson
Mhm.
holding up the dodecahedron.
Mhm.
And when we're talking about the equator of the solar system, the equator of the galaxy, even the Earth equator, and the cross section, the equator of a dodecahedron, if we were to cut that out in half and open it up like two halves of a shell, then the equator of a dodecahedron is a decagon. That's what this is. So a decagon, a flat surface polygon, the cross section of a dodecahedron. Well, the creator of The Simpsons, generally, when they're painting or drawing up Lisa Simpson, they create her here. She's the smart one in the family. They create her here based on the decagon.
Mhm.
You can go on get lots of images of Lisa Simpson and put the decagon shape over her face there, and there she is. And this is symbolic. This is tuning in. The creators there have tuned in. They are saying here, and even there's one of a snapshot from one of the episodes. There it is. She is talking to, I forget the young one's name there. There it is. There's the dodecahedron. Here's the decagon. So she's fifth dimensional. This is what it is. And it doesn't have to be called or labeled fifth dimension. It's what she's doing. It's how she lives her life and how she teaches her father and so on. She's the smart one in the family. She's tuned in.
I think
So the
words, like those words, the numerical values, they add up to something over there. Like,
oh
yeah,
sure, okay. Yeah, let's have a look at these.
you
Yeah,
know how
this
to live like that. You know, that's good. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, this was kind of done for a different reason, this image here, but A1Z26 at number 82, so we've got the decagon, that equals 82. Avatars, Star Kids, Quest, Gateway, Switch, Perfected, Genetics, Innocence, Pioneer, Intent. Well, they all equal 82. So in other videos we've done, we've used the decagon as the Stargate event horizon that you go through,
Mm.
which is why we were doing this. It's kind of like the switch or the portal to leap through a Stargate. But it's interesting that her hair is that shape, and so these are things. This is like education to the collective consciousness done in a very subtle way. The
Mm.
creator of The Simpsons isn't going out there claiming he's part of the fifth dimension. He's just creating this cartoon show, and that's it. That's enough.
Especially because the Simpsons seem like I don't know too much about it, but it seems like the Simpsons have predicted things like 20 years ago that's happening now. I keep seeing people talk about that. So maybe the creator, like you said, is one of the people that maybe doesn't know, but they're actually teaching all of us, right? Like the truths about it. That's very cool.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And this was a few more. So we're just kind of looking at now the original 144 social dynamic complex or structure there. And we're just looking at here, just one example. I've got lots of compiled images on my hard drive. People can get in touch with me if they want to, but through my Facebook page and that, and I'll send them a link and they can download this with heaps of collaged images. But I'll just put this one together. So here we are. We've got the cartoon. Now, this is the original Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh yeah, Sonic.
So the creator of some cartoon characters, Kim Possible, Sonic the Hedgehog, Little Pony. So those creators knew that the golden ratio is the common template of beauty that is just well understood. So why not create your character based on the geometry of the heart and compassion and beauty? Your character is going to be more eye appealing. So there's another subtle way that people can just tune in and help others and resonate with the fifth dimension without even knowing or without even realizing they're teaching the fifth dimension.
Mhm. You're saying just when a symbol or a character is based on the golden ratio, it's just going to be more appealing, like a people's business name, their logos with the well, it's just kind of like something we all like because it's natural to us and we find it beautiful because it's kind of the code of creation in all of us. I love that.
Yeah, and of course, that's not to say some of the negative people can also create cards, like business cards based on the golden ratio, because they do. It's one of the most common shapes or sizes for business cards and so on, is the golden ratio length and height or width there, because it's just eye appealing. So the negative can certainly try and use the golden ratio, and they do use it, especially for things like portal travel, Stargate travel, and so on. But they have a big problem in the sense that because their heart is not radiating golden ratio harmonics, because they don't have purity of intent, then their impact, their output, their resonance, their connection to the fractal, to the universe, the wholeness, the oneness, that's not happening for them. So they can certainly try and use the golden ratio in any way they do, and many ET groups are doing that. Or I shouldn't say many, but some ET groups that are negative certainly apply the geometry and the maths of the golden ratio to try and accomplish their goals. But because their heart is not naturally generating empathy and compassion, their auric field isn't interacting with the galactic center, the galactic administration, and so on. They're cut off. So that's the fail safe that the universe puts in there.
The heart really is the key. Like how our heart feels is the key to our next stage of evolution. Hence why people should try to keep their hearts pure. And in the ancient Egyptians, they would say, keep your heart light. And so there's all these things people say that seem like
Yeah,
kind of lighthearted, but really it's the most important thing is our heart and how it feels, right? So, wow.
absolutely, absolutely. My go-to for anybody that's like claiming to be a channel or more advanced and so on, if they're not light-hearted, I'm not interested because they have to have a lighter heart. They have to be more light-hearted. that means more jovial, things like that. So here's just something I used to do, or this is a decade or so ago. I used to take these models here that I built out of cardboard to different schools and so on. And here's some of the kids playing around with them. They'd be making them, and we went through them, and it's sort of part of the education system there. Or, in the future, will be part of the education system. The 5D geometries and how they might how people might then go on into whatever creative field, whether that's the art or it could be the sciences and so on. They'll take that knowledge into their future in their education. So in my view, what would be prime, the first thing right down there at the first few years of education would be to, I'll just go back here a little bit, would be to take children out into nature, of course, to help them feel nature and feel empathy and so on. But it's also useful to them, like here it is here. So in nature, whether it's a moth or a butterfly, or whether it's sunflower seeds or a shell, or the way leaves branch up a tree, or whether it's the geometry of a pineapple, or the shape of the face of a koala bear, you know, predominantly nature and the natural world, animals and plants and so on, even our own human body, is predominantly built around the golden ratio maths and geometries. So
Yeah.
for young people, that would be the first thing I'd teach in mathematics.
Mhm. Like that would be a good way for them to relate to math like in their everyday life. Or sometimes people are like, why are we learning this math? But it's like, no, like the flower is even math. Like everything is math. And the kids would remember it. And this will probably be the future of education, right? And you were saying like when you guys had events, the kids were drawn to these shapes. Like when you put them out, the kids, like the younger people were drawn to it. So there's a part of them
Absolutely.
who knows this is the truth, you know? So cool. And I
Absolutely.
would love to play with those toys as a kid, you know? It'd be so fun.
Yeah, yeah. And also another way of saying that as well, a rose. So a rose has five petals, and inside there's another five petals that's going to unpack. And those five petals with the larger ones, they create a decagon because the five are not exactly, they're sort of tilted round to create, they're offset a little bit. So a rose petals, as they're opening, flower, flower, that creates the decagon. And the aroma of a rose, that's what the golden ratio smells like. The
Oh,
beauty of the smell of the rose is the aroma of the golden ratio. That's what it is. So some of these things, they sound small, but to know about them and know how they fit in with the rest of the fractal of the larger and smaller, that is the near future education.
so you're saying the golden ratio impacts all of our senses when we see it, when we smell it, when we hear it in music, right? Like even I'm assuming sense of touch, like all the five senses and beyond, somehow the golden ratio impacts them. And yeah, I mean the rose smells so good, right? And I know when I smell a rose, I always feel my heart chakra like change immediately, you know, especially if it's a really good fragrant rose, right? But you're saying that's based on the
That's
Fibonacci.
right.
It's fascinating.
That- yeah, that's right. That's right. That's the senses, basically because it's the template of beauty. So that could be in sound, it could be aroma. Some of the most famous poems, the way the words are written across each line and the length of the poem based on the golden ratio. It's well known. It's not something I've invented. And some of the famous classical composers in the past, but no doubt many are doing it now. They just haven't measured it with modern day composers. Many of the famous composers built their composition around the golden ratio, and then it becomes a classic. It lasts through time. It doesn't die off.
Wow. Yeah, I remember we covering that in the music once. Everybody go and watch the video on music and 5D sound. Graham goes into the notes and everything about what makes it based on the Fibonacci sequence, which so fascinating. What is that?
And
Free
here's free energy.
ice? What's that? That's like the thing that's like the best thing in the universe is what we need, right? Like free energy all over the planet.
Yeah, not so much free, but it's just extracting it from the ether or from the plasma. So this one here now, I don't have a link to this one, but here the magnetic coils are around here, and there's 10 of them. So it's a decagon again. So electrical engineering is not my field. I'm as clumsy as in that field. So I can only really just I can't make many comments, but there are others around. If people have heard of Dan Winter, Dan Winter is right on the cutting edge, applying the golden ratio in numerous what loosely called free energy devices. So this one here as well, this is called a city of light. This is a designer who's creating a town, and this is an aerial view, like a plan view. Here's another sort of offside plan view like Google Earth. So why not use the shape of compassion and the cross section of that shape, a decagon? Why not use that as town planning, the shape of your town? Because that shape, the golden ratio and the heart shape, empathy, compassion, the most open, the most accepting, the most unifying. So the geometry is the all those terms, openness, inclusiveness, sharingness. So when we use those terms and when we're talking about compassion and empathy, well, when we have the geometry of that same waveform, then that is clearly the best shape to build a town or a city where lots of people are coming and going and so on and so on. So urban design in the future, that's also going to be applying these geometries of the heart. That's just already being done. Many people, well, I
And where
shouldn't say
is
many, but
that,
people.
Graham? Like, where is that city that you just showed us? Is it
Um,
built? Do you know where?
n- Gee, I wish I had of
But it's a real city, right?
I
Not just a design. It's
Well, it's a design by a famous architect. That's about as much as I can remember of that one.
amazing. Thank you
Sorry,
for finding that for us.
I,
Well, you're saying
I
like
think
we basically build it based on shapes that have a certain frequency. It will allow that village or community to have that frequency then. It's kind of like the feng shui, but like
yeah,
5D feng shui kind of. So cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's fifth dimensional design. Yeah. Well, here's another way of seeing it. So this is the Marion organization. A woman there, a friend of mine, not a close friend, but a friend nevertheless. So she had an out of body experience a few decades ago, and she saw a few geometries and the way that those geometries were pulsing and interacting. And she got together a group of physicists and so on, and they built the shapes that she was seeing in her visions. And this is a cinoscope or cymatic snapshot. So the what she's done here is that she has recorded the pulsing, the heartbeat, the heart pulse, and we're watching it. This is just a snapshot, but we're watching a video, real-time footage of the heart pulsing, and we've just taken the snapshot from her video. So here it is. These yellow lines here, they go out, and the heart is pulsing a decagon.
Mm.
And
So
in 3D, that would be the dodecahedron and the diamond shape that we've been looking at earlier on here.
the heart
So there
actually
it is.
radiating out this shapes constantly when it's in a vibration of compassion or just is
Yeah,
it
the vibration of compassion. There it is.
wow.
And over here, this is from science, and we were looking at a photonic crystal before. We were looking at the geometric shape of it. Well, here it is on a flat pace, on a flat surface, and there's 10 main lines going out here. It's a decagon. So whether it's light or our heart, compassion and empathy, that's based on the decagon. That's just metaphysics. Over here, we've got clusters of galaxies built around the arms of a decagon. So larger, large, small down there in physics, photons up to the super large megastructures built on the same geometry. That's the word fractal. That's the word wholeness, oneness, unity, is to realize how everything's built on this template, the same template. So in the fifth dimension, we'll build, or the architects will design city or town planning or place where children play grounds and so on based on these geometries. It'll be the happiest environment. It'll be the most open environment. It'll feel all that. We'll feel it while we're there, but it'll also be the most ergonomic. The best way that it's that it that the for movement and transport and all those things, it'll be the best in that respect as well.
So beautiful, it's aesthetically so beautiful to look at. And I've heard people say like God is beauty, God is love. And then this is actually showing us the shape of what that means, that like the frequency coming out, compassion is that's what it looks like. And then the beauty of how things are structured actually brings out the best in all of us. So it's just
That,
amazing that it's
that's
not
right.
ideas, there's actual physical aspects of it, which I think will help people to know that it's bigger than we thought, probably.
Absolutely. And, in the fifth dimension, we have unified left and right brain. We've unified male and female mystery school topics. We've brought them together and utilized male and female, the feeling, the compassion, empathy, psychic, artistic, with the rational side of the male side of it, urban design, building design, and so on. And we've brought those together, and by utilizing them and unifying them, that is what creates the global fifth dimension. That's what it is.
So beautiful. I love that.
And this is just another one here, like fruit and so on. The apple, well known, you can go into Google search and see the cross section of an apple there. There it is, a golden ratio. The way the seeds nest in the apple, golden ratio, pentagon uh, structure there. So growth itself, the way that nature grows
Mm.
over a period of time, lays itself out and grows over a period of time based on the golden ratio. The egg shape there, same thing, golden ratio egg shape. The distance from the point of the apple, the seed there, out to the circumference of the apple, golden ratio again.
And I like how you
Uh,
said there, like eating the raw food will actually allow us to connect deeper to the golden ratio. Probably why, a vegetarian diet is so much better, right? It's kind of like instead of eating dead things, we're eating alive things, but this is actually like being built inside of us, like the frequency kind of, because it keeps going, right? Like the golden ratio doesn't have an end. Like when you look at the number, right? It's kind of just like, and just kind of keeps going. So I'm assuming when we eat it, probably it kind of like builds us too, like in a good way, instead of when we eat meat, it's almost like killing us, like it's rotting inside of us or something like that, right? So,
yeah, exactly. When they talk about the fifth dimensional body of a fifth dimensional human, uh, in the sort of once they've been in that for a while, the bodies become more and more light and more etheric, these spiritual terms. That's because naturally eating etheric geometry, the food here, based on the geometry of the ether and the plasma. So with a diet based on fruit and vegetables and so on, yeah, our body is becoming more and more fifth dimensional, more and more light filled, more etheric, and those other phrases there.
oh, it's beautiful.
Famous, yeah, famous composer here. Now, I don't know why I haven't got his name on here. I usually put his name when oh, here it is, Vincent Calabert, Calabort. I'm imagining he's a French guy. So he's tuned in. Here he's developing massive complexes based on the golden ratio spiral and so on. So, it's not that architects don't know this when they're going through university. Many of the universities would be teaching that the golden ratio is a template of beauty. So many visionary architects are starting to work in that, starting to utilize that understanding.
These are actually built, right? Like these are not models,
Um,
are built. Do you
I'm not, I don't think these ones have been built yet. No, these are his
imagine if the earth
visionary.
looked like this? Like, oh my God. So as people are getting together, they can like we can end up building things like this. And
Yep,
wow, it's so appealing when you look at it. I instantly feel happy just looking at it. So I can just imagine
exactly.
what you like to live in it, just amazing.
And it'll be an era too where there's no um, holding back of money, finance, resources by people who want to capitalize and make money. So the design and so on for urban designs and so on, it'll be once it's identified as the best way of doing it, or doing it in such a way which tunes in with reality and nature. There'll be no holding back of resources to make that happen. It'll be, let's do it. Let's provide everything that's required and necessary to do it so we can do it in the best possible way out of the best materials and so on. So it's not like now where there's all the things that get in the way of building something like this. So once we move forward, the collective consciousness will see, they'll just know, they'll resonate through their own heart. Well, this is it. This is the best way of doing it. It's the tunes in with nature. It connects to the higher realms. Let's just do it. So all the resources and finance and everything, or whatever is required, will be there, and it'll just happen much, much quicker
So
than
money will be different in the future. Finances will be different in the future. It's not going to be the same manifestation stuff everybody's doing now. Like in the 5D earth, finances are going to be, like you said, like whatever's needed, the finances will go towards to building it. I love that. So more effortless abundance versus evil right now, like has all the abundance and just kind of not giving it to the rest of humanity, right? So.
Absolutely. And it might not be called finances, it might be just resources. Each country has unique resources. So it'll be about more about, I imagine, more about, well, all these countries have these unique resources. So we'll just share these resources around the planet to create whatever needs to be created. And that'll be kind of like finance, in that sense. Lots of domes here.
Wow, look at that. So a lot of dome shapes, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a trick with the domes, but a dome by itself can be activated to become more like the golden ratio. It is in a way a golden ratio construct. But if we were to put crystals at some of the points, where the struts meet here, then sure we'll have a really activated golden ratio environment to live in.
So beautiful.
And it doesn't have to be just a dome. This one over here, if people can see my cursor arrow here, this comes, I think this is from the Venus Project.
Mhm.
So the Venus Project there, this guy's died now, but I think he lived to about 100. And he spent decades and decades building little models of housing, alternative housing in nature. And they're all curvy, very beautiful curving. And, those curves are probably golden ratio because they look so beautiful. So it doesn't have to be just a dome. Nowadays, you can create all sorts of curving structures, and curve upon curve and so on. So I don't think it's limited to just a dome shape. It's more the curve itself. And you can link curve to curve to curve and create more of a complex dome than just a straight dome.
Mhm.
Um, Oh, this is also just as we're back to dance and so on here. So this is this was 100 years ago. Um, the guy's name's written there, Laban, I think his name. He started that whatever that however you say that word there. So
Peru.
100 years ago, he, he created move dance movements, and I'll expand it a little bit here. Um, I guess we're getting near finish time. An hour and a half seems long enough. So here he is here. There's a woman in here. And he's created this structure here that she's moving. So she's moving her hands along the lines and stopping at the points here. Well, this is the same geometric structure which we were looking at before for the dome. And it's part and parcel of the golden ratio geometries. So here he is, he's designing 100 years ago. Here's some snapshots here from the same thing. So the person's moving around and touching or going to these points, and that becomes a dance movement. So the dancer's dancing inside the light body.
Wow.
Same thing over here with photographer. Here's the photographer of dance and movement here. And the dancers dancing here and so on, and they're creating the movement there, and it's aimed at beauty and health for the body, stretching and so on. And along comes a photographer, and the photographer wants to catch the best second of clicking the camera. So he does that, doesn't have to know about the geometry. But when the geometry comes along and puts the curvy golden ratio spiral over the top, the photographer has captivated the most beautiful moment to click the camera, and there it is. The golden ratio is there again. So it's beauty, form, dance, health, stretching, photography, all these things. So this is how the fifth dimension is. It's very broad, very open, and very kind of has many, many different tangents to it that is all part and parcel of making the fifth dimension what it is. Um,
Dancing,
just maybe a few more.
like all the cultures and ancient cultures in the world, like the Africans and Asians, South America, Native Americans, like all the cultures, they've had dance as a part of their spirituality, right? And like children naturally dance, you don't ever have to teach them, right? Like there's something with dance and the way humans move that's very like, I don't know, like visceral, but also like very ancient part of us, right? And I know like in the Gita, they talk about a dancing heaven. When I went to the other side once, I saw like a bunch of gods dancing. And so just it's very interesting to me dancing. And then how you were showing the movement, it makes sense. Like maybe as people become more natural into their higher selves, then their dancing kind of will just be like their expression, right? So I don't know, it's very
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And remember, I can remember, I'm old enough to remember when surfing became a big thing. So it's the same for the surfer. The surfer's out there on the wave, they're trying to catch the best wave, do the longest kind of ride, and the best wave, here it is. They're surfing inside a golden ratio spiral. The wave itself is a golden ratio spiral. So surfing would be considered fifth dimensional. That's what it is. The surfer's out there trying to catch the best experience of the surf, exact bliss experience, puts them in tune with nature, with reality, and so on. Along comes the cameraman to catch that moment, to catch the photograph when the surf is right in the peak moment of experience, and they put the golden ratio spiral over the top of the photograph. So these are simple, simple, simple things that are often taken for granted by people who identify the fifth dimension as something somewhere else
Mhm.
done by people who are only part of the fifth dimensional phraseology movement, and things like that. So very important to realize this. The Starship Enterprise. So this is back in what, the mid 1960s.
Mhm.
The not only were the storylines informational about the early Star Trek and what they were doing. That person, Roddenberry, his name was tuning in and writing storylines. But the actual creator of the Starship, the Enterprise itself, based on the golden ratio. That's what these lines are showing here. The drawing, the planning of that, what that ship would look like. So on and on it goes. And the more our third eye opens and becomes more aware of seeing the fifth dimension, then the broader our understanding and the more examples that we can see around us, the more examples we see of the fifth dimension. That's what it is. Here's the dream catcher. So here it is, 10 points around the dream catcher. Not all of them have 10 points, but you can make one there, which is a decagon, catching the dreams. Anyway, so I think we've come to the end now, and
Oh, yeah.
um,
Yeah. Color amp.
this was a little bit uh, this was a little bit different in the sense that I didn't know whether you're aware, but one of the most predominant colours worn at the outdoor festivals and very sort of up-to-date modern environments and so on where people go to dance and that. One of the most predominant colours is amethyst, magenta amethyst. And in metaphysics, well, that's the colour of the ether, beyond the seven colours of the rainbow and that. So astrophotographers can't stop themselves from tinting their photographs amethyst magenta because it's the color of that invisible plasma, the ether. And when people are tuning in, well, they want to wear that color. It's in the art decor. It's in the fashion design, the hair coloring, etc., etc. So just fun things like that are you know, a part and parcel of this.
I love.
So now we have come to the end. There's numerous other shots I've got here, but I
Mhm.
think we'll pretty much leave it there.
Yeah. Wow. So the community structure. So today we kind of covered a lot, but let's kind of like exit out of this and then we can kind of just kind of have our wrap up if that's okay with you. We can kind of close out of this. Yeah. So today was really good, Graham. You covered for us like the solstice, what's happening with the sun and the earth being in a straight line for the next few days, people meditating, and naturally compassion will be sent out to the locations where there's pain. We talked about your guys' village in Golden Bay and how it naturally occurred, and all these 5,000 people are now living there, and everybody goes to what they need for the different people. We talked about the education for children. You talked about how they're naturally connected to sacred geometry. And then you talk to us about the golden ratio and how the fifth dimension is already here when we dance, when we surf, when we dress up ourselves, cut our hair, even we're connecting to the fifth dimension. So I love that because it makes it tangible and not something like we have to go
Mm.
create. And then as far as the new earth, the villages you showed us, I love because now we kind of know that's what's coming. So even though the world seems a little bit in chaos, that is a vision for the future. And so, is there anything else you would like to share on that, like as your comments, please?
Well, I just summarize that. Like in the nature of physics, you've got entropy or self-destruction or destructive wave interference, and you've got constructive wave interference. So as the negative is battling amongst itself, of course, people get injured and hurt along the way. But as the negative, basically, it's a pyramid structure with the emperor at the top. So it's a battle amongst themselves to who can get to the top position. And as that's happening, that's tightening. That's like the friction in an engine of a car. It causes heat. It eventually causes its own self-destruction. So that is happening. No way we can avoid that. That's going to happen. And of course, people get hurt along the way. But as well as that, then you have constructive wave interference, which is heart focused and heart, therefore heart geometry, heart resonance, and so on. So that instead of that closing in on itself, heat overheating, then you have phrases like chill out, stay cool, man, things like that. So it's chilled out and it's speeding, its acceleration is accelerating and broadening and more encompassing as it goes. The opposite's getting tighter and tighter and slowing down to an eventual, collapse. So both things are happening at the same time. It's just so happened we decided to incarnate right in the middle of that.
Wow, I love that. So it's kind of like the darkness is going to kind of crumble on itself and the light is just going to expand. It's kind of like I'm oversimplifying it. You said it a lot cooler. I like that. But I like the idea that you
Yeah.
said like darkness is kind of fighting to be the emperor, almost like the dark Sith lords are always kind of betraying each other, right? But the Jedis and the light beings are kind of like expanding. More of us are finding each other and it's just naturally happening. So even though things seem dark, we would you say we need to have we can have hope that something good is going to come, even though things seem scary right now?
Yeah, absolutely. The negative is, it's like compared to say 60 years ago, the
Mhm.
negative was operating invisibly, you know, around the planet, and they were doing whatever they were doing. Now it's all out there. So they might think that they're doing things out of sight, but the next day it's on social media. So, they're exposed in real time. The global collective eye, social media and so on, is watching the negative more or less in real time. So they got nowhere to go. They got nowhere to hide. So it's at that moment in history that they talk about in the spiritual and the channeling and so on, that right here, right now, we are watching the final days of the negative falling in and self-destroying itself. Now, I'm not saying that people are not getting hurt along the way, but that's where we're at this point in time.
Wow,
Mm.
I love that. It feels so good to hear that. And I hope that everybody that watches this video will have the same feeling and have some hope and good energy come into their life. And we can, let's just say a little prayer, just send some prayer for the places that are suffering. So we gather here. Thank you all those who have joined us here today. And we just wish to send love and compassion to all the areas of war, all the places where there's great pain happening, people that are being moved, and we just send lots of love to them and lots of support and peace and protection. And may all of them receive the support that they need from the highest dimensions. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you. Okay. And thank you so much, Graham, for your time and always being so generous. I love your PowerPoints. It's just like amazing. And I'm going to have to watch it again. So I keep learning from you. And I'm going to go ahead and post
Thank,
it now. And everybody, please write comments, share this video so that everybody in the world that needs it will get it and get the information that they need. So,
And thanks too for what you're doing. It's a project we're both doing here. So, that's very cool.
yes, yeah. Honored to do so. Honored to do so. Talk to you soon, Graham.